So this morning we're going to be looking at some industry-related topics on cross-reference, as well as how SiliconExpert helps OEMs, contract manufacturers, distributors, and suppliers to find cross-references for various reasons. If at any point you guys have any questions, please use our questions box, and we will address those at the end of the webinar. Any that aren't addressed, we will email you personally. And please respond to the survey at the end. We are always looking to improve, and that is one of the best ways that we can do that. Again, my name is Tierney Powers, and this is my contact information. I'll also be following up and responding to questions after the webinar. So today we're going to introduce SiliconExpert for any of those of you who are not customers. I know we do have a lot of customers on the call, and thank you very much for your business and for helping us to continue to improve. Once we cover that, we'll look at the cross-reference presentation we've put together. Then we'll show a demonstration of how SiliconExpert helps with that and helps with finding crosses at all different times in the supply chain and the design phase. And we'll cover the questions and answers at the end. So for those of you who are new to SiliconExpert, we are a database which was compiled first in 2000, and today we have over 250 million components. The components are in the electronics vertical, not only ICs and discrete, passive electromechanical, wires and cables. Our database is fresh and, most importantly, accurate data from not only manufacturers, but also franchise distributors for inventory. From that data, we have created software tools that allow OEMs and contract manufacturers to more quickly and efficiently do day-to-day processes, such as quoting, such as designing new products designing new parts into products. We also offer integrated solutions where our data can be populated into an internal system, and we do professional service projects where we customize our data collection for customer needs, such as environmental compliance documentation, conflict minerals, and other services. As I mentioned, our customer base is made up of OEMs, distributors, and suppliers, as well as contract manufacturers. And we have thousands of users using the tool each day. SiliconExpert was founded in 2000, and that's where I'm located this morning in Silicon Valley, California. This is our headquarters. We also have 350 employees, and those are focused on the engineering processes, both software and component engineering. So these engineers are broken down into teams focused on areas such as data acquisition, quality analysis, even a special team focused directly for cross-referencing, compliance, and so forth. The database itself, it's compiling data from 250 million plus components. That's the manufacturer part number. You can also have internal part number information in the tool using a customized version. Up to 42 parameters are compiled into each part detail page. We also look at risk analysis information and obsolescence information in order to compile and to create algorithms Those algorithms are generated with the help of University of Maryland's CALCE department. And we'll go into some of the factors that are considered in our risk analysis algorithm later on in the presentation. With regards to regulatory data, we aren't only focused on the big ones of RoHS and REACH. Now, one of the most important to our customers is conflict minerals, and the list is just continuing to grow. We always are aiming to collect the full material declaration so that we can not depend on manufacturers to provide more data. We can actually use our systems to update whether parts are still compliant or not using that full material declaration information. And then one of the other aspects of our database is, of course, cross-references. So one of the teams is focused on generating more cross-references for parts. Each week we have about thousands and thousands of cross-references that we're adding for millions of parts over the year. And today that's what we're focusing on. So for here, we're going to talk about what exactly SiliconExpert does for its 900 plus customers with regards to cross-referencing. You probably have touched SiliconExpert at some point, somehow, some way. We work with franchise distributors. We help manufacturers find cross-references. We help contract manufacturers with finding cross-references for customers. And whether you're searching on Google or no matter where you're searching, some of that data is most probably coming from SiliconExpert, which is very exciting, and all the more reason why it must be as accurate as possible, because we really have a large audience who are analyzing that data and making sure that it's accurate. Typically, as we transition into more of this specific topic, what happens is a company needs to multi-source, ideally in the very beginning when they're picking out a component. So changes happen all the time with components, and whether that be because of price hikes or life cycle changes or market availability issues, pricing, natural disasters, etc. Companies understand that they need to have a second option. And so that's why a multiple sources for a part are necessary, as you all know, which is why you're on this webinar. So when we want to do that, it's time to either initially provide those cross-references and second sources, or we need to react once an incident occurs, like the above. So for instance, when the Thailand flood occurred, or when the Philippine typhoon occurred recently, or any of the major environmental panics that occur, these cause shortages, these cause price hikes, and increases in counterfeiting, and these are all issues which we will need to know about in order to respond appropriately. Now, sometimes you're just caught and finding that you can't find inventory anywhere for a part, meaning that you need to find a different component. Here's an example of a component that price hikes occurred because of internal business issues. Actually, this was an acquisition. So for this type of case, you might look to find another component that's less expensive. Another case might be that distributors aren't carrying parts any longer, and you need to find components that have inventory now. When we look at counterfeit parts, first we're going to show you right here what are the most commonly counterfeited product types. So here the op-amp, that's number 1. And you can see the other product categories. Well, in general, if you find out that one of your parts is counterfeit, obviously that requires a replacement. But in our tool, we're also able to tell you the likelihood of a part being counterfeited. And you're able to then say, well, if that's one of the parts that I want to use, perhaps I should cross-reference it to something else. Now, one of the main reasons companies are needing second sources, usually it's because of life cycle issues. They're looking to prevent issues when a part goes obsolete. Many of our customers have found that they were initially relying on a very dependable source to provide PCNs, but they were still missing PCNs. And why was that happening? Well, PCNs, as it turns out, are only associated with obsoleted parts 58% of the time. 42% of the time, parts are obsoleted without a PCN. So that being taken into consideration, customers are turning to us looking for data on those other parts so that they can be updated via email alerts on changes so that they can, as soon as possible, find alternates when they're not available or when they don't have them initially. So for over 30% of PCNs obsoleted, for obsoleted parts, those already have a last time buy order date. That means that if they had known ahead of time that a part was going to be obsoleted and had some time to make those purchases, they might have been able to get better prices. They might have been able to find more inventory. So what happens here is one option is initially when choosing a cross-reference or when choosing a second source, looking not only at whether that part is active, but also on how long that part will likely stay active. By knowing how long a part will remain active, an estimate that we can provide, that will help you in avoiding this type of situation where a last time buy is immediate and the whole industry is looking to find parts. This slide is showing us overall which parts are obsoleted the most. And what pops out, literally, is that semiconductors are obsoleted the most. Second most. So actually, excuse me, they're the second most. The reason why it pops out is because that is the most expensive redesign when a semiconductor is obsoleted and the board needs to be redesigned, as you all know. So here, the electrical and electronic components in general are 18% of those going obsolete, and there's interconnects, 21%. Optoelectronics are the least, 3%, and displays. Passives are the most, 31%, and then semiconductors, a sizable 27%. And this, as you can see, is from data that SiliconExpert compiled over the span of January 2000 through October 2013. Typically what we're going to come back to is, why are we needing to multi-source in the beginning? We're coming back to the same topic. Component incident occurs, whether that be a life cycle change, whether that be the market availability, pricing issues, natural disasters, etc. When that happens, it's time to react if we haven't already chosen a component initially to have second sources. So the first thing that we're going to ask ourselves when a component issue occurs is, do we have another source? Are we covered? By designing parts with second sources, that can happen more easily. However, oftentimes, for business reasons, it's more economical to maybe have less second sources. And so you're stuck with a part that goes obsolete and you don't have a second source. So how do you find available replacements? Well, this is the same process that is taken initially when you're first designing a product in. What we're looking for here are crosses or alternates. And we're going to go into what the difference is there in a few slides. The next thing that we're going to look at is, should I make a last time buy? So if a part doesn't have any alternates available, perhaps we need to make a last time buy, and where am I going to do that? Which distributors carry inventory? How much does that cost? How much inventory is there? These are the types of questions. And then do we have enough time to react? So if I need to redesign a product in order to accept another component, in order to choose a cross, do I have the time to do that, or do I need to make a last time buy? Or do I need to go to the gray market? So going back to this, let's rewind a little bit. Initially, we're going to need to be proactive. That's the number one solution, to design a part into a product with multiple sources. And when doing so, there are things to consider. Just like when you choose a component initially, we're looking for that component also be multi-sourced, that the life cycle is active, and that it has a far-out end-of-life date estimated. We're looking to make sure that that part is ROHS 2 compliant, complies with REACH, and that there's conflict mineral information from that manufacturer, ideally. And then we're looking to make sure that that part has a history of being available. Inventory from franchise distributors, and so forth. Now, when we're looking for crosses, whether that be in the beginning when we're looking at a part and trying to find multiple sources for second sources, or whether that be when a disaster strikes and we need to quickly find a cross, SiliconExpert helps customers to do that. And we have broken it down into a series of types to define what the cross is. What's the relationship between the cross part and the initial part? So a type A cross would be a pin-to-pin compatible form, fit, and function cross. There's also the type A upgrade, which means there's a larger operating temperature range, or there could be a downgrade. Type B is a pin-to-pin compatible form, fit, and function, minor parametric differences. Type C would be pin-to-pin compatible, major parametric differences, or packaging differences. Type D is similar part with different package and pinout. And type F would be a device that has the same functionality but is not pinout compatible or parametrically equivalent. So in general, an A and a B, we've titled those as procurement crosses, whereas C, D, and F require engineering redesign. But it's always good to have an engineer check out the differences. So later in our presentation, we'll be showing how you can export that type of comparison between two parts and send it around to others inside of your organization. Now to what's the differences between options and crosses. I mentioned earlier about the two. Options are from the same manufacturer. So if you have a part from TI and you have another part which is a replacement also from TI. Crosses are from a different manufacturer. So the difference here is sometimes one is more desirable, sometimes another is more desirable, but one thing to consider is if one company is for all of the crosses used, then what happens if that company has financial difficulties, if one of their factories is hit? Often it's better to spread out who you're working with for a second source. We've developed a white paper which looks at the best practices for cross-referencing. And this really has to do with anybody in the industry, no matter how you're looking for a cross. The first is to ensure a form-fit function match, ideally. Next is to confirm the lifecycle status and to forecast obsolescence dates. So it's not just about whether a part is active, it's also to see if the part is going to remain active. Next is to check whether that part complies with regulations your company needs to comply with. So most companies need to comply with RHS 2, and most companies need to comply with REACH. So that's a given. Now, the next thing would be surveying market availability. So that would be from franchise distributors, ideally, and seeing how many of those franchise distributors carry the part, how much their average quantity is perhaps, and what is the history? Is it that they've had inventory 1 month and then they haven't had any the next? What is it? The fifth best practice is looking for existing counterfeit reports. So by choosing a component, if you're looking to see if there's a high risk that that part be counterfeited, that's something you would be able to do inside of SiliconExpert. Or perhaps there are other ways, of course. You can gather additional crosses for the future. So with each cross, you want to make sure that there are other sources available still. It's kind of like a continuation of the same idea. And then finally, you want to evaluate that part manufacturer's reliability. So that came from our white paper, which we put out on that topic. We can send that out if anybody has a need for it. So here, we're almost going to close up and move into the live demo portion. But in general, it's good to just look at how important it is to be proactive, and at the same time how difficult it can sometimes be to justify spending around being proactive. So like a good health insurance plan, perhaps you'll always be healthy and you'll never need that. And so every month you're paying for something that you never end up paying for. But maybe one time you go to the hospital and all of the amount that you've paid so far more than makes up for that cost that you would have otherwise had to pay. So that is a lot like what we do for our customers in this area. So when we're talking about helping customers, generally time spent searching for components, searching for cross-references, searching for data, you can see where the time and the cost, it outweighs the cost. However, when we look at something like a line going down, a part going obsolete, not being able to find a cross, that can have a much more significant financial problem for a company than, say, what they're going to pay for some sort of solution like what SiliconExpert offers. And that will bring us towards what we offer, both the part search and the BOM manager tool. Part search allows you to search for one part at a time. BOM manager allows you to upload a spreadsheet and export a spreadsheet with added data. So a whole bill of materials can have all of the material declarations associated with the parts exported, a link to those, that sort of thing. I'll show you a report later on for being able to identify multiple cross-references for multiple parts all at once. In the part search tool, you can do that one part at a time. So one part at a time, you can find out parametric information. You can search for parts by part number. You can search by product line or by description or by supplier. You can access data including environmental information, process, parametric information, data sheets, lifecycle, PCMs. The same data can be obtained in the BOM manager only in bulk. So when you manage and optimize a part list, what we're talking about is scrubbing. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to scrub. You need to manage and optimize that part list, make sure that those are accurate numbers. You want to find out what the risk is within a BOM, and we'll look at the different risk factors. You want to find out about obsolescence issues and whether there are parts that aren't compliant. And customers are looking to get lifecycle trending information so that when they design a part in, they can see, okay, well this part is active today, but it's anticipated to go obsolete in 2 years. But this product needs to be around for 7 years, so let's look for a cross that has a few more years anticipated life. As I mentioned, the first thing that you want to do is scrub a parts list. So what we have put together is 4 pillars of the BOM manager, and that scrubbing is number 1. The first thing that we do is we upload a part list, scrub it to find out whether the parts are correct part numbers, whether the suppliers are still the correct supplier. We manage the life cycle by looking at whether these parts are obsolete, if any part is not recommended for new design, or any parts are last time buys. And from there you can find parts that cross to that part which are active. Another pillar, number 3, is we can create custom reports or off-the-shelf reports. Those would include the cross-reference report I mentioned. And then finally, the proactive step of setting up alerts. So setting up email automated alerts anytime something goes sideways. Anytime a PCN is not issued for an obsolescence, but we are able to obtain the data, you would receive an email. Or anytime a PCN is issued, you would receive an email with that PCN. So at this point, we're going to go into the tool and look at both of those tools, those applications, and what we've just discussed. The user interface is very intuitive. To log in, you need a username and a password. And we're brought to our home page. I'll just show you a little bit, walk you around it. Here is the training area. As I mentioned, we have unlimited training associated with anyone who's a customer. This is a training video area that you can also use. It just has a link. You can see how many projects you're working on, how many BOMs, how many members, so how many users there are within my company, which alerts you've set up, which support tickets you've set up, and we'll go over what that is, and then what parts are in your briefcase. So the first thing we're going to look at here is how to search for a part and find a cross-reference using a particular part number. So say we're looking for an LM317. Now, this part right here is obsolete. This part right here, perhaps we need to find a cross for this part. You can see here that the grade is 2 stars. This is a different grade, and it's looking at the popularity of the part. One thing that you would use that for is when looking at how high risk a part might be. So if a part is very popular, it's stocked by distributors, it is used by many OEMs and contract manufacturers, it's less likely to be obsoleted. So this part has 2 stars, not too many, and look, it's obsolete. So let's see if we can find a cross on this part right here. Scrolling down to the additional details, select 6 crosses, and we can see that 2 of them are also obsolete, but there is another part here that's active, but it is a C-type cross. Over here is a difference between those 2 parts, but you might want to further look into it and see what exactly those differences are, of course. And so what we're going to do is we're going to compare side by side these 4 parts. And any comparison or any report can always be downloaded into an Excel spreadsheet, which I will show you. And this is going to show you every aspect of the part, not only summary information such as the popularity of the part, the data sheet link, the lifecycle status, ROHA status, ECCN, Schedule D, HTS code. This is also going to tell you the parametric differences, of course. Anything that's different is in a different column. Anything that's the same is in the same row. This is going to tell you the packaging difference, manufacturing differences, moisture sensitivity level, compliance differences. So again, this is going through everything that we talked about in the presentation. When looking for a cross, we're not just looking for, something that is a pin-to-pin drop-in replacement. We're looking to make sure that that's an active pin-to-pin drop-in replacement, which is compliant, which has a low probability of being counterfeited, which has inventory, and is low risk, hopefully active for a long period of time. For inventory, we are updating our database on a daily basis, 5 days a week from franchise distributors. For pricing and lead time, that's aggregated. Risk analysis, let's look at this. Here we're showing you that this part has an 83% risk score, whereas these parts are lower risk. And so overall, this is going to help you to make a decision on which part to choose. Now, all of that, again, can be downloaded into an Excel spreadsheet. And this can then be circulated around the organization to engineers, supply chain, materials. And you can see all of the different data points are down here in the tab. If I'm going too fast, again, we can always provide you the presentation at the end. And also, we can always provide you the training links. So the next thing that we'll look at is how you can search for a part by product line. And the reason for doing this might be when you're first looking for a part for a new design. So you want to look up an op amp from a particular manufacturer. You can then parametrically search to find parts that have the particular technical parameters that you're looking for, as well as a few supply chain related factors down here, such as the life cycle and RHS status. We can view the results. And in this case, these parts have two options each, so that doesn't really need to be taken into consideration as far as which one you're going to choose for a second source. But what I was wanting to maybe show you was that sometimes when you're looking for a part, then you might find second sources. And when you're looking to determine which part should be the second source, you also want to make sure that those parts have a reasonable amount of crosses or options. By searching by supplier, we can then find parts that way. So say you know that you're looking for a certain cross, but you want to stick with a certain manufacturer. In our world, we call manufacturers and suppliers, they're the same thing, interchangeably speaking. But we're also going to update our system and just transfer everything so that we call it manufacturer to create less confusion. That was one of the suggestions the customer, several customers have made. Which brings me to the point that up here on every page, you can make a suggestion using our support ticket system. That suggestion might be to add a part. Maybe we need to add a cross. You know that there should be some crosses out there, but we show there to be none. Well, we have a whole team of engineers working to find cross-references, and they're adding thousands and thousands and thousands a week. But, of course, we don't have crosses for all 250 million components, and so we really appreciate our customers coming to us and asking to add certain crosses, because if someone's looking for a cross, someone else is also looking for a cross. And this really helps us to build the database. So that could be adding missing data, such as a cross-reference. You can also make a suggestion, like please change all listings of suppliers to show as manufacturer. You can tell us to correct invalid data. We're also not 100%. We're not perfect. But if we weren't very good, we would not be in business. So at this point, we will finish up here by looking at the compare option. So say you have one part and you know that this is, we'll use that same example of the LM317, and you know that that is a part that needs another cross. And you know that part number as well. You can also compare right here. Rather than searching by part or by product, you can search and compare in this area. Selecting in the squares. And these, of course, need to be in the same family, product family, in order to compare them. Here you can compare up to 8 parts side by side in case you're wondering. Before we go into the BOM manager, this is where you would go if you had any questions related to industry topics, related to documents that we have published, or anything along those lines. Another area is up here in the tools area. You can come to our help location, and this will help you with figuring out how to use the part search tool, how to get certain information. Let's go into the BOM manager, and we're going to upload a bill of materials. So while we upload the bill of materials, I'll tell you what exactly we need that to be in which format. I created a file for this BOM, and within each file you can upload multiple BOMs. Within each BOM you can have up to 5,000 components. Here you have the option to upload in the format of Agile, an indented BOM, or choose from the Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to use a sample BOM. And this is the format it needs to be in. Just one column for manufacturer, one column for manufacturer part number, and recommended but not required is the one column for the internal part number. Then from there you can also have other columns for information such as pricing or inventory or description that you look at, lifecycle status you already have, but this is all that is required. So hopefully at this point, for those of you who are customers, this is a good mini training and refresher course on the different aspects of using the tool. Once you've uploaded a BOM, if you have suppliers which are unidentified, take a look at those and see if there are simple ways to solve that, such as in this case, it looks like this could be advanced linear devices. And select that. This one, Kemet, is misspelled. Accept selections, and from now on, you saw that I created a project. Anytime I upload a BOM into that project folder, you'll be able to skip that step, and we'll recognize the suppliers already since we've mapped them now. So to reiterate the 4 pillars, they are scrubbing for validation, managing lifecycle and risk, exporting reports and creating reports, and setting up alerts to be proactive. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to scrub. We're scrubbing this list of parts to find out, are these good part numbers or is there dirty data in this BOM? Oftentimes dirty data is going to prevent you from being able to be proactive. Procurement's going to go out trying to find these parts, wasting time, looking for the part from distributors, looking for inventory, looking for pricing. That's just wasted time that could be spent negotiating. So here you can see that there are 167 exact matches and there are 28 similar matches. The reason why this is relevant to cross-referencing is because in order to identify whether a part requires some second sourcing help, you need to make sure that you have the right part number to begin with. So here we're helping you with that. In this similar match area, this is telling you that, well, let me just rewind a moment. In this exact match area, we're telling you that this part is in our database. We recognize it. Here's the manufacturer's part number, and verifying the manufacturer, and here's the description. Inside of this bucket, which is what we call it, is the auto-corrected bucket. The auto-corrected bucket simply means that we recognize it, but there's something a little off, like AVX, this should actually be Kyocera, or a Dale was acquired by Vishay. So we're optimizing the line for you by giving you the most up-to-date supplier name, the most up-to-date manufacturer part number, and bringing you the description. In the similar part area, that means that it's even further off the part number to the point where we don't recognize it exactly. So this could be a number of cases. One of them could be that we don't have the part number in our database. This is the instance where you submit a support ticket and ask us to add that. Another case could be that this is actually the wrong part number. So, for example, we would press Edit over here in the match status. See that this is what we're suggesting is the part that you're actually looking for to be in this BOM. You can compare that. If there were multiple options, you could compare them side by side. Or you could just select it as a match, and then it would jump from the similar match bucket into the exact match bucket. If you're not sure, you look at this part, and this is not part of your role, it's identifying whether that's an accurate part number or not. You can select the square box, take action, and one of those actions could be to forward the part to a colleague. So if you want to forward this via an email and let them look at it and say, this tool recognizes that we might have an error in our BOM, would you say this is an error? They can confirm that or deny. Other take action options are to submit to SiliconExpert for review from right here, or to set up a reminder to revisit the part. Once we've scrubbed, the next step is to look at the data. So this is where we're looking at risk. This is where we're looking at obsolete parts, end-of-life issues. First step is to identify who's active and who's not. So this is showing that 5 parts are not recommended for new design. Over here you can find where all the crosses and options are. So you likely would like to cross a part that's not recommended for new design. Here there are 80 crosses available for this part. You can filter it down so that you only have the most relevant cross, A and A upgrade. You only have crosses that are RoHS compliant. We started with about 80 crosses. We only want crosses that are active, of course. We only want crosses that have inventory. Now we're down to 9 crosses. We can go even further, and depending on how many BOMs you've uploaded, if you're a brand new customer, you wouldn't show this, but I have uploaded many, many BOMs into the tool. And so I can see where a part has already been used in another BOM. So at this point, we have pretty much clarified that these are all healthy options for, or healthy, not to be confused with options, healthy second sources for this original part. So why not choose one that we've already used in another design right here? You can select the BOM label, which shows you that it's in another BOM of yours. Compare these 2 parts side by side. Now you've just narrowed it down from 80 crosses to 1. Here we show there's 1 part that's last time buy. Same thing, you can either look at the options. And you can see here with each option you can identify, well, yes, it's active, but also what is the estimated years end of life. Compare those two. And then furthermore, say you can't choose that one. Instead, you want to make a last time buy. You can always go over to the Buy Now button and collect information there by going to the Buy Now. Same thing for obsolete parts. Pretty much any part that's not active, this is the process that takes place. These are the ones that you want to focus on. And so you select that hyperlink 36 number and go and see what parts are available to cross to. Who has inventory if I need to make a last time buy? Clicking Buy Now, you go directly to the distributor's site, and you can see what the order quantity, minimum order quantity is, what's the available amount. Again, this is updated on a daily basis, so it's quite accurate. A faster way to do this, identifying high-risk parts, which is what we're doing when we're looking at which parts are active or obsolete, is looking at the overall grade of the BOM and having it broken down into the different factors that we look at. So when we look at high-risk parts, we're looking at life cycle, multi-sourcing, environmental, and inventory. So as mentioned earlier, a part could be active, but if there aren't any second sources available and the part is not RoHS compliant and no distributors are carrying inventory, well, that's a very high-risk part. For the most part, though, life cycle is the #1 thing to look for, and so we weight that as 50% of the algorithm in this case. So you can quickly go to those 42 high-risk part numbers, which is what we were just looking at, the end-of-life parts, anything that was not recommended for new design, obsolete, or last time buy. And you would take those, you can download that BOM, and then you can upload that back in, and so only focus on the high-risk parts. Rather than looking at the rest of the 100 or 200 parts in this BOM, we only need to really focus now on these parts that need to have cross-references found. This also helps you to look at parts that perhaps really need attention for cross-references right now. By uploading your internal part number, which I mentioned was recommended but not required, you're able to see what is the percent of parts that has second sources, so which internal part numbers have more than one manufacturer part number associated to it, and which have only one. In this case, 162 have more than one. I have less than one. I'm sorry, have one, and only 6 part numbers have more than one source. So you can see that right here. It's actually only one manufacturer part number has 6 manufacturer part numbers associated to it. The rest in this whole list of parts needs more crosses. Now I kind of stumbled over my words, but the point is that here we're showing you that, okay, well perhaps there aren't any second sources available for all these parts, and there's nothing we can do about it. Well, over here we're telling you actually there is something you can do about it, because out of all of these parts that are in your BOM, you have 72 that have more than 5 sources. You have only 43 that are single source. So there is a lot of improvement, room for improvement here. And same can be done for each of these areas. When we look at the reporting, this is where I'm going to show you the one main report associated with cross-referencing, and that's the multi-sourcing report. Here you can check out which crosses are available for all the parts on your BOM and narrow it down by those that are most relevant. So only looking at A crosses, only looking at active crosses, and so forth. And then that creates a spreadsheet that gives you many crosses at once for many different parts. Lastly, here you can set up an alert. So it's one thing to have second sources. It's another thing to have a proactive approach put in place. And that's where you're receiving PCNs, you're receiving change notices, and you're receiving the life cycle changes as soon as possible so that you can do that as quickly as possible. And you can choose whichever you like by entering your email address here, linking it to a BOM, and going from there. So at this point, I've used up all of my time, and we're going to move into questions and answers. So I'm going to turn it back over to Amanda.
Okay, great. So the first question coming in was, how are SiliconExpert's cross-referencing data gathered? How is it gathered today?
That's a great question. The data is gathered a number of ways. We gather our data not only from the manufacturers themselves. They do provide us feeds, and we've built relationships with them over the years so that they, of course, want customers to see across to one of their parts. We also have developed some tools that are focused on the manufacturer website that pick up changes so that we can know whether crosses are still active or not. And the main way that we do it is, since we are collecting data sheets via those two ways, we have all of the parametric information, and that is utilized by our cross-reference team to parametrically find crosses. So when we say that we have a cross-reference team, those are component engineers using the data sheets to find crosses.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tierney. The next question is, how do you know if a part went obsolete if there are no PCNs associated to it?
And apologies, I think I stepped away from the mic for a moment on that last one, so if you have any additional questions on that, I'm glad to email you directly. With regards to how do we know if a part went obsolete, if there are no PCNs, that's a very good question. What we do is we will let you know, first of all, how we find out by showing you the source of the obsolescence. We'll show you updated data sheets, which is how we can find that by getting data sheets from manufacturers and seeing that part status has changed or that some sort of part change has occurred. And we get that by monitoring the manufacturer websites using those tools that I mentioned, web crawlers, URL checkers, data acquisition tools. And then we do manual checks, calling and emailing the manufacturers themselves to follow up and to find out lifecycle statuses that are questionable in our mind or that seem to be difficult to discern.
Great. The next question is there a way to get a free trial of the tools you showed today?
Yes. Anybody who wants a free trial of the tools, we can set that up. We do have the training inside of the tool so that if you need to brush up, we can provide that. Or we can also set up a live demonstration with myself or one of my colleagues and set you up with a username and a password that will give you access for a limited amount of time, but usually it's very helpful even during that amount of time, and either to part search or BOM manager with some parts for you to upload. So good question. Thank you very much for asking that one.
As distributors for a particular manufacturer.
Yes, we do that, and that's in our supplier area. So if you search for suppliers on the supplier page, you can see all the franchise distributors in line with that manufacturer. You can also see that on each individual part search page, each part detail page, by looking at the supplier information.
Okay, and thank you, Tierney. And as a final question, what is the membership cost to SiliconExpert?
So SiliconExpert, it depends on which tool you're looking for, but for the part search tool, we start at $6K generally per year, and BOM Manager is meant for being able to upload a spreadsheet. If you have a spreadsheet, depending on how many parts are in your database, it's going to have a different cost. So the short answer is that part search can start at $6K. BOM Manager is undeterminable at this moment since I'm not sure how many parts you have.
Okay, and I'd like to remind the audience at this time, there were a lot of really good questions that just came in all at once. Any questions we didn't get to today, we'll follow up with you personally by email. We're running out of time, so I'm going to go ahead and let Tierney close the webinar.
Thanks, Amanda. And thank you, everybody, for attending. We really appreciate it. I know the holidays are busy, and we wish you all a safe and happy holiday and hope to have you on future webinars. Thank you very much.